You know, the Knicks fans were going crazy when you were on the podcast last week, Scott. So I wanted to get your take on their season so far. They've started 1-2. They lost to the Celtics in their season opener. They got the win against the Hawks, but then they fell to the Pelicans. What's been your first impressions from watching this team this season, and how have you felt about them?
When I watched them in the opening game against the Celtics, one thing stood out in a positive vein, even though they did not win the game. You could sense some familiarity with the guys. This group had been together now for a year. Jalen Brunson was no longer new. This is his second year coming in. The starting five is the same starting five. So I saw some sharing of the basketball that was very encouraging, very positive. And so that has to continue to be something that they get better at because they know each other better this year. And they only have one new player with it. Basically, they switched out Obi Toppin for Dante DiVincenzo. Now, I think they're smaller in the second unit as a result of that change out. So how they're going to work through that. How much is Josh Hart going to play back up for versus RJ Barrett going to play back up for? Those will be things to look out for moving forward. They go on and anytime you get a road win in the NBA, it's big. Thought they shot the ball very well, played well in that game to get that win, and then went on a back-to-back to a Pelicans team that early on, even though they didn't look as good in the preseason, but since the regular season has started, I think they're really starting to come together. And, Zion Williamson is that force of nature, and that was their home opener, I believe. So those games are always tough to play when you go to play someone in their home opener. But I'm going to be watching closely to see, just again, how that familiarity, how much that's going to help them this year. And then also want to see the level of improvement. RJ Barrett is just 23 years old now. So what kind of jump is he going to make? Jalen Brunson had a fantastic year, first year in New York. I mean, you couldn't have written a better script for him or the team. But now, this will be his first year now, even though it's the second year, but his first year of being kind of the main guy on the scouting report. And BJ can tell you, that's different. Last year coming over from Dallas, Luka Doncic was the man. Well, when he came over in the point guard position last year, so people didn't really know, how he was going to do in that role, how they should defend him in that role. Again, like I said, he exploded, played terrific. But now, all this season, he's going to be more than likely the first name teams are talking about how we want to defend and how we want to stop. So how does he respond to that? Can Mitchell Robinson continue to grow a little more offensively? I mean, he had a tough first game with getting in foul trouble, but he's rebounding the ball extremely well, protecting the rim extremely well. But can they help him develop a move around the basket where he can be more of an offensive threat, not just on offensive rebounds, but where you can throw the ball to him occasionally and make a play? That'll be important as well. And then, I obviously don't want to leave out Julius Randle. What sticks out with me with Julius and watching him these first few games, because again, he has been the focal point of a lot of opposing defenses really since he's been in New York. His patience level looks better to me knowing Julius. He wasn't forcing as many things the minutes that I've watched him play thus far. He's been willing to make the easier pass. And ultimately, that's just going to help him become more efficient. I know that's something he's always wanted to do. He's a sponge when it comes to wanting to get better, wanting to learn, wanting to grow his game. And I think this is a great opportunity for him this year to grow his game from a perspective of being more efficient, being able to still score those 24 points a night, maybe on a shot or two less, a turnover or two a game less. Then I think that can help this ball club win more games.
I mean, we have to say this in New York. over the years, whether you play there as a visitor or you've had friends and you've worked there, there comes with a level of expectations when you play in New York City. Okay. And that's the elephant in the room in playing in New York, right? It's kind of one of those things you have to understand that when you come to New York. Last year was fabulous. I mean, arguably you had a chance to get to the conference finals just a year ago. And every year in New York, it comes with expectations, especially this year. So I think this team, even though they have the same roster, even though same familiarity with one another, however, the expectations now, when you come into the Garden, they expect to win now. And that to me is probably New York may be the one of the most difficult places to play because of the expectations that you have there. There's no other place in the country like New York City. All right. There's no other team that has that level of pressure. And one thing I've always respected about the fans is they are knowledgeable. Okay. This is a very elite fan base. So I think this is going to be interesting to see how this team performs this year because of the expectations, because of the success they've had. Jalen Brunson had arguably when you say a career year, he had a career year. Julius Randle has put together now I think he's made 2 or 3 All-Star appearances now since his arrival there in New York. And now we're looking for RJ and Mitchell Robertson and other pieces to step up, to elevate, to meet those expectations. And, if there's one thing that stood out to me is I always look at Coach Thibodeau and defensively what he's doing. That's where he has made his bread and butter. And, I think I was watching the Atlanta game. I mean, the score was like 121 to 126 or something. Okay. And I was like, okay, I know Coach Tibbs. That's one thing. If it's one thing, he's been on our show. Defense is that's his thing. So that to me has stood out, especially early in the season. And we'll see how this plays out. But I think there's a lot of expectations on this team. I like their team. I like what they do. However, I'm going to be looking for them to really meet what the fan base is all saying. I think right now we're probably saying they're a top 4 team in the Eastern Conference this year. If you were to ask, the experts, and, now we weigh in on that. So it's going to be interesting to see how they perform and how they respond to this year's expectations.
Yeah, just to go back to Scott's point of familiarity, the swap in Obi Toppin and Dante DiVincenzo essentially in the roster. It's great because Dante already has the familiarity from Villanova, playing with Josh Hart and Jalen Brunson. But what I wanted to ask, to BJ's other point about the fan base, how much does that affect your job when you were working in the Knicks front office versus when you were working in other stops around the league? Because we saw in recent years Knicks fans going absolutely crazy. I don't know if you guys, because I know you guys ain't up on the TikToks and the Instagrams like I am, but you see the fans outside screaming bing bong and all those viral videos. Does that filter through to the front office? Do you guys keep an eye on, like, is it that much more pressure than everywhere else you worked in the league?
Look, you obviously know it because, again, and BJ made the point, and I said this and I learned it very quickly going to New York. Not only are they extremely passionate, but they are very knowledgeable basketball based.
Yes.
And in my first couple of years there, I lived in the city. So anytime I run into a lot of New Yorkers, and they had no problem stopping me and telling me exactly see what's going on. So, and I enjoyed it. I really did, and I really embraced that about that place because didn't quite have that anywhere else. Not to say that there's not, there's extremely passionate fans. I worked in Detroit a long time, and that's my hometown. But that's, I knew a lot of people there, I knew everybody, but just strangers that I didn't know that just, felt like they were, they're really a part of it. And so, yeah, you hear all of the quote unquote noise and commentary, if you will. I mean, you can't help but hear it, see it, feel it. But at the end of the day, you can't allow it to deter you from doing your job and doing what you feel is best to build a basketball team. And so that's what personally I always felt, and I always thought, and I would just pivot in my thinking, just do what I believe is going to be the right thing for this team to help this team get better, because we all want to win. The New York fan base has been they've been dying for a champion since 1973. It was the 50 years,
and they're gonna let you know about it wherever you go. They're gonna let you know about it.
They're gonna let you know about it. That's what Clyde and those guys are still big stars today,
right?
Because they are the last champion, and that means something, and people are just thirsting for that to happen. So, hopefully for them, this season could be another building block towards getting there. And to BJ's point, expectations will be high. We went to the second round. We lost to the eventual Eastern Conference champion in the Miami Heat. So, and I'm sure the guys themselves are going to have high expectations of themselves. That's what people. I'm sure they realize it, or they should at least. You got a lot of competitive guys on that basketball team that want to and believe in themselves, but want to go as far as they can. So I'm sure they're all going to be working as hard as they can to get there. And it's going to be interesting watching the journey.